Morning. Good morning. You don't have to turn off your video if you don't want to, but welcome. Can everybody hear me? Hi. Anybody want to introduce yourself or tell me where you're from or if you're interested in editing or coaching or something else?
Well, good morning. I'm Ann Jung and I live in Albany, New York. I'm interested in editing, actually. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for being here. Anybody else want to say hi?
Hi, Paulina. I was here for one of your earlier sessions and I'm back.
Can you tell me your name says CPL iPhone?
Yes, I'm Christine.
Okay.
Christine,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, thank you for coming back. Were you at one of the Ask Me Anythings this summer?
I don't remember what it officially was, but
Okay.
I don't know. I think this is for me, it's just a process and I keep coming back to this. So I think this might be where I end up landing, but I won't be in a new position until and I won't be done with my current position until next June, so it's a long journey.
Okay. Gotcha. It is. It is a big decision to make, leaving the job you thought you were going to have for your whole life and then realizing it's not making you happy the way you thought.
Yeah, but thank you for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Philip, you look like you're in a lab.
I'm actually in my office.
Oh, okay.
I apologize for getting on late. It just clicked in my head that it was 10 o'clock Eastern time, not Central time, and so
Oh yeah.
I
No, and you're not late at all.
oh,
I opened the doors a little early just to to say hi and
okay. So were you asking folks for information since I jumped on late, or
sure, yeah, we're just chatting until I get started.
oh, okay. Um, Good morning. Uh, Phil Harris. I am currently a professor of biology. I'm a few years, not that many years. Well, depends on how my kids go, but I'm looking for the towards the future with all the issues with grants and other things now. The prospect of remaining in this job up until, well, I'm not that far away from retirement in theory. I could work beyond retirement age. Um, so I was just looking. I've been sort of casting about trying to decide on another direction if I should jump ship. So that's why I'm here.
That makes sense. My husband works in Alzheimer's research.
Oh, interesting.
So we definitely were very concerned about the grants and everything.
Yeah.
And thankfully his particular lab is largely privately funded. There's a private donor who has provided funding, um, but there's a lot of other labs at the institution that are not. And so we'll see. It's
Yeah, I had
definitely,
I had one grant taken back, so
yeah, it's scary, definitely. Anybody else want to say hello? There's some more folks trickling in here, and then we'll get started in about a minute or two. If you want to just share where you're from and what you're thinking of doing.
Hi, I'm Rosalinda. I'm out in California. Um, and I'm actually in the K-12, teaching in K-12. And yeah, I have a few years left as well. But I'm definitely looking to um, well, looking to edit, doing developmental editing more for books. But I'm very, very curious on what else is out there besides books, besides developmentally editing books. So,
Great. Yeah, I think we talked on, was it LinkedIn maybe?
oh yeah, we were messaging.
Yeah, yeah. Great. I'm glad you're able to make it. Anybody else want to say hi? You don't have to. Totally fine if you want to be in the background.
Hi, I'm Susanna. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. And I am in Texas, at Texas Women's University. It's a small-ish public university, and I'm also looking at sort of developing my exit strategy, but 2 years, 2 or 3 years down the road, I'm not ready right now. Um, I'm actually committed to a grant. It's a private foundation grant, thank goodness. So it didn't go away. Lots of support, but that's a 2-year grant. So I want to finish that out. Yeah, thank you for having this webinar. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say, and I love your podcast.
Oh, thank you. I always appreciate hearing that. With podcasting, you kind of put yourself out into the world and you have no idea what people think. So I do appreciate whenever somebody says something. All right. Maybe one or two more people want to say hi and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Oh,
Aaliyah.
hi. Yeah, Aaliyah, good job. Well, easy to mispronounce. I finished my PhD last August and have been looking for work since then and getting basically nothing for my efforts. And I knew when I went into the PhD that I didn't want to, become a tenured professor, that I would rather avoid teaching and focus more on like research and stuff. But it's a tough gig right now. So I really enjoy editing and proofreading and so forth, and supporting like private research projects for nonprofits or whatever. So you know, going it by myself a little bit more seems like maybe the way to go.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think after working for myself, I don't think I could ever go back to having a boss. Once you get a taste of that freedom, it's
Yeah.
you don't want to go back.
I've had a taste of it. I have been working um as like an freelance research consultant for the last few years, and I really have enjoyed that, and actually it got me funding for my PhD. One of my clients just paid for me to go to the school. Um so that was really great, but it doesn't provide enough work to keep me afloat, unfortunately.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, maybe we can help with that, even if you decide to
Yeah.
stick with that and or combine it with editing or something. So,
Mm, thank you.
all right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Um, Let me share my screen. And so I am terrible with navigating the chat while I'm also trying to talk. So, if you do have any questions, please feel free to um, put them into the chat, and then when we get to the Q&A portion at the end, I will answer them. And one more person coming in. Okay. All right. Um, Thank you all again for being here. I love doing these talks because every time, I get to hear from people who are still out there, who are still in academia, and you see kind of the light bulb go off where people realize that they don't have to stay stuck after all, that there really are other opportunities out there. And so I think if you take away one thing from today, that's what I want it to be, that whether you go into editing or coaching or anything else, if you are unhappy, don't stay. Just having been through that torture myself and that decision trying to figure it out, you don't have to stay. This idea that academia is your only option is ridiculous. And so there are many other options out there, and you are capable of doing other things. Can everybody see this screen? The slides okay? Great. Thank you. Okay. So I am Paulina Cossette, and my company is Acadia Editing Services. And in today's conversation, I'm going to show you that you're not alone, as I said, and that there is an alternative path either as a full-time career or even as a side hustle. There are a lot of people in my program who start as a side hustle while they're still faculty or they're still in industry or whatever they do, and they build that business up over time until they're ready and they're comfortable, whether they're waiting for retirement or kids to finish college or whatever it is. They start part-time and they build it up over the years until they're ready to quit. And so I'm going to walk you through these 3 steps. This is the framework that I teach in my course of how you can land freelance editing jobs or coaching clients. And we'll talk about how working with me in my course and group coaching program can help you earn $100 an hour or more as an editor or coach. Like I said, even if you're just starting out part time. So I'll start by sharing my story. If you've listened to my podcast, you may have heard some of this. It's the first episode is I share, my story of leaving academia. Um, and then we'll dive into these 3 steps of how you can get started, even if you decide to do it on your own. And at the end, I'll close with Q&A. So a little bit about me. I was a U.S. politics professor, which had no idea that it was going to turn out to be such a terrible topic to study. It used to be fun to study American politics, not so much anymore. And I got my PhD in 2013 from the University of Florida. I grew up in Florida, spent my life there. And I ended up leaving academia in 2019. I had success with publishing. I did all the things that I was supposed to do. I got a tenure track job. I published articles. I co-authored a book. I taught. I had great teaching evaluations. There was a lot that I enjoyed about it. When you have great students who are really engaged and nice people, it's wonderful to be a professor. But I also found that the stresses of academia combined with the worsening political climate just it made it impossible for me to stay. It was really quite unbearable what I was having to go through. I even tried at one point to change institutions. So in 2017, my husband and I left Florida and we moved to Maryland, and I worked at a small liberal arts college on the Eastern Shore, which was a very nice school. In many ways, the experience was a lot better there. But after everything that I had been through previously, which some encounters with students were really pretty awful, not to mention also some colleagues too. A lot of the problems continued, right? The department was better, the school itself was better in Maryland, but you still had plagiarism, you still had academic dishonesty, you still had 5-hour faculty meetings that kept you on campus when you should be at home with your family, preparing dinner and putting your kids to bed. And so a lot of these issues were still there. Also, we were living very far from our family. My husband grew up here in Maine. His mother was diagnosed with lung cancer around this time. We had our first child, our son, and that really put in perspective for us that, we want to be near family. We wanted to have a life outside of just my career and my academic job. And we decided that, that summer of 2019, we had to leave. I knew that there was a very small chance that I would get an academic job here, but I also didn't really want to get another academic job. And so we really had to choose to prioritize our happiness and our lives and our freedom over this idea that, my academic job was the be all end all of everything. So I finally reached the end of my rope when my son was about a year old, and I was working 7 days a week. I was staying up late at night. I was not getting any sleep because I had a baby, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. Um, the thought of going back to teaching in the fall made me physically ill. I really just felt so terrified and sick at the idea of going back to teaching. But at the same time, I also had this ridiculous, intense guilt that like, oh, if I don't do this, I'm going to let people down. And, my department chair is going to be unhappy with me and my students are going to be let down. And my mentors, my advisors, many of whom I hadn't talked to in years are going to be disappointed in me. And like all these thoughts that go through your head that I know so many people experience, but when you look back on it, you realize it doesn't make any sense. Um, but this conflict between wanting to fulfill my needs and the needs for my family and this intense fear of letting other people down made me so anxious, constantly thoughts spinning. It was really a horrible experience. But in July, we finally made the decision. We put the house up for sale and we said, I can't do this anymore. We've got to move. And so we did. And I applied to a bunch of non-academic jobs. I kept getting told I was overqualified or my resume was too academic, whatever that means. And, I had just published my book with Routledge and I had worked with their freelance copy editor. And before that, I had no idea that copy editors existed. I had never worked with an editor before. Nobody talks about working with an editor in academia, even though everybody does. Um, and I figured, I'll contact the press and I'll see if I can do this. It'll give me something to do while I keep applying for, quote unquote, real jobs. Um, and so for about 6 months, I spent hours online. I sorted through job ads. I was Googling, freelance editor jobs and all this stuff, which is really a waste of time. But I eventually figured it out. I got freelance positions with several editing agencies and presses. I'm going to explain today how I did that and how you can do that as well. Um, and, it took a couple of years of searching for other companies to see who paid better, to see if any did pay better. They don't. And then it just took me time to get up the courage to start trying to attract private clients because I knew that that was the way to make real money in this business. And I was scared. I thought nobody's going to hire me. Nobody's going to pay me this much money to thousands of dollars to edit their journal article or whatever. But finally, I got tired of taking peanuts and I did it. I went out there and I did it and I figured it out and I've had a lot of success since then. But there were really no other resources available that taught editors how to do this. And so eventually I cracked the code, and the last few years have gone really well. When I started attracting private clients at the end of 2022, I was putting my name on what I call ETD lists, or electronic thesis and dissertation lists. And so you probably remember you finished your degree, you had to do all the formatting to get university approval. And it's those offices that approve the dissertations many of them keep lists of editors. And so I got my name on those lists and that's where I got my first clients. They were grad students who needed an editor to help, go over their dissertation and do the formatting and all of that. There were even quite a few faculty who found me through those lists. And so that's how it all got started for me. I had just 6 private clients at the end of 2022. Then I had 55 clients last year in 2024. And in fact, I actually had to turn quite a lot of people away because I just didn't have the time to take them on. So for me, the best part about freelancing is, besides the fact that I made 6 figures last year, which I never thought I would do, and I probably still wouldn't be doing if I had stayed in academia, while I also work just 30 hours a week, is that I get to work whenever I want. I stop work every day at 1 o'clock to go pick up my kids from school. We take vacations every year. In springtime, it's freezing and miserable in Maine. So we go to Bermuda or the Caribbean or whatever. And I don't work when I'm on vacation. I don't feel guilty for not working when I'm on vacation. And I was never able to do that when I was a professor. So, let me stop there with my story. Again, the point of sharing all this is to show you that it is possible that, the myths that you hear in academia about, oh, you can only get a 9 to 5 job if you leave and all that stuff, it's absolutely not true. So today, we will jump into what exactly does an academic editor or coach do. I will also tell you the skills that you already have that make you well suited to launch an editing or coaching business. I'll walk you through these 3 steps that I teach in my program in BAE for launching your business. Again, either as a side hustle or as a full-time career. And I'll tell you a little bit about the program and what to expect if you join the 65 other people who have enrolled and joined our community in the last year. And then we'll take Q&A. If you do think of something after this call, please feel free to email me, and I'm happy to reply or to set up a phone call with you or anything like that. So, a couple of you mentioned, developmental and copy editing. Those are really the 2 main types of editing. And I realize not everybody here might be interested in editing, so I will discuss coaching as well. But first, if we think about developmental editing, that is really the big picture form of editing, right? When we are doing a developmental edit, it's usually of a book manuscript, though it doesn't always have to be. It could be a dissertation or even a journal article. But typically, developmental editors work on books. Oftentimes, they pair developmental editing with book coaching. And so you're working in partnership with an author to sort out the manuscript, to look at the overall organization, the overall structure and flow, to make sure that it makes sense. Does the author have a clear thesis for the book? Believe it or not, they lack that quite often. Does each chapter have a thesis that supports the overall argument that they're making in the book? Do they have enough evidence? Is the writing clear, right? Kind of all these big picture structural organization aspects of a text before the author goes on to submit it to the publisher, because you want to make sure it's in great shape before they send it to the press to get reviewed. It can also be, you can also do developmental edits after they get the reviews back from the publisher, and those reviewers suggest changes or whatever. This, however, is different from copy or line editing, which is what I describe as the classic red pen edits, right? If you're doing copy or line editing, you're reading through a text, checking for typos, checking for punctuation and grammar errors. You're also revising to improve the clarity and flow. You're looking at the references list. You're cross-checking the text to make sure that everything in the references list is included in the main text and vice versa. You're applying formatting. So whether it's a dissertation or a journal article or book, you're looking at the submission requirements and making sure that everything is the way that the publisher wants. And applying those kinds of heading styles and page margins and all that stuff to the document. This could be working on journal articles. It could be books. It could even be things like job market documents and tenure packets. I've edited tenure packets for people, which is actually a lot of fun because they're terrified and you can give them some support when they most need it. But really anything academic, or of course, if you want to do nonfiction editing or fiction editing or whatever, right? This is cleaning up the language to get the document as close as possible to being able to be published. So where do academic editors work? There's a lot of different options here, but I'm going to break them down to the ones that I think are the most relevant for people who are starting out. The first is what we call editing agencies. And these are companies like Scribendi or Adans or Proofreading Pal or, all these websites that exist out there. Clients, many of them are multilingual authors. Their English is not very strong. They don't have connections or even maybe the budget to work with a private editor. And so they send their manuscript to one of these websites. They get a quote and they pay online, and that website will send the text to a freelancer like you to do, usually it's a copy edit. They don't usually do developmental edits. And you do the edit and you send it back. And so you are getting paid to do the editing without having to do any of the marketing or even having a website if you're not ready for that yet. You're really an independent contractor for one of these companies. And I'll talk a bit more about the pros and cons of that in a minute, but I do think they are a good place to start if this is really your very first foray into professional editing. You also have academic journals and book publishers. This is pretty self-explanatory. You can get hired again as an independent contractor or freelancer for an academic press. I worked for University of Georgia Press for a little while. I worked for Routledge, for Edward Elgar, which is an academic press in the UK. It's very similar idea, but for these, for book publishers, obviously you're editing books before they're going to print. So the manuscript tends to be quite a bit cleaner than what you would get for from an editing agency or even an academic journal. Sometimes, quite surprisingly to me, the manuscripts that get sent to the journal and are accepted for publication are kind of a mess sometimes. Then finally, we have, this is really the holy grail of and what your business should be working towards if you're an editor, and that is to work with private clients. And so this could be anybody from graduate students who need help with their dissertation or job market letters or even submitting their first journal articles. It could be faculty. It could be research institutes or nonprofits, government agencies, all kinds of stuff. And I think that working with private clients is the best option once you've gotten a little bit of experience because they pay better. But also it's really rewarding. I have a lot of clients who they had me edit their dissertation and then they had me edit their job market letters and then they had me edit the first articles, and you hear about them having a baby or landing their job or like you develop these long-term relationships with people and that makes the job really a lot of fun. So, with coaching, as I mentioned, there are a lot of options here where coaching can be paired with editing. And so you could be a dissertation coach and kind of step in to fill the gaps that a supervisor might or a PI might not, they're not always that helpful, unfortunately. Or a student maybe needs a bit more support and accountability. And so you help them stay on track to finish their dissertation. Or maybe you're a book coach and you help scholars do everything from drafting a book proposal to seeing the manuscript through to publication. You could be a public speaking coach. I know people who work with academics to help them prepare things like conference presentations. If you do research design or qualitative or quantitative analysis, you could develop a coaching business like that, right? The sky really is the limit here. And this in particular gets to the homework assignment that I gave you if you got that email, or the workbook that I shared, how to map your academic business. And to figure out what you want to do as a coach, you really need to answer those two questions of who do I love to work with? Who do I want to serve? Who would my ideal client be? Those are all part of the first question. And then the second question is, what problems can I help them solve? And so you get some examples here of public speaking or analysis or whatever. But it really can be anything. I have a friend, Bethany Walensky, who's a sabbatical coach, and she's still teaching. She's a professor in the US. She went on sabbatical and realized it's really hard to plan a sabbatical successfully. And so she decided to make a little side hustle out of it where she now coaches people through planning their sabbaticals. A member of our program wrote her dissertation on relationships between advisors and graduate students. And she had a really terrible experience with her advisor who was abusive and terrible to her. And she's now turned that not only into a dissertation, but into a coaching business where she helps graduate students stick up for themselves basically and have positive relationships and interactions with their advisors and their committees. So really, there's really an endless amount of options here for you to take your expertise and frame that into a business. Okay. So I thank you. I see the question there, and I will get to that shortly because I love to talk about AI. So, what skills does an editor need? You should be a strong writer. For copy editing, you do have to have an eagle eye and knowledge of grammar and punctuation and all that. For developmental editing, you should understand what it takes for a book to get published, right? It helps if you've written an academic book and published one, although you don't have to. Um, I also get the question quite a lot that people who say their first language is not English and so they wouldn't be comfortable copy editing. That's no problem, right? With developmental editing, you're not cleaning up grammar and language and all that. It's just more about supporting people through the publication process. Um, I also add here that you need to have people skills. I think it's important when you're in a service-based business like this that you're flexible and you're kind and you're a mentor. And if you are someone who does not like to work with people, this is not a good job for you because as we all know, academic life is hard, really hard. And people are going to come to you oftentimes when they're in the depths of their, you know, struggles with trying to publish or trying to get tenure. And they desperately need help. And I think that what makes an editor or a coach really stand out is having empathy and kindness and being willing to be flexible if somebody needs to cancel a meeting because their kid is sick or whatever the case may be, because that's just life and it happens. And so I do think that's important. Um, as far as, all of these questions about editing and coaching and stuff, you have these skills, right? If you have been supervising student research, if you've been grading papers or teaching writing intensive courses, if you've co-authored, if you've done peer review, all of this stuff, you've done this, right? That is editing. There are some tricks in Microsoft Word that you should learn to make the editing process faster and easier, but you do not need to get an editing certificate. You do not need to go back to school, right? You have all of these skills. If you feel comfortable working with a co-author or a colleague and giving feedback on their research and their writing, you can be an academic editor or even an academic coach. So I'm going to break up now these 3 steps. Steps 2 and 3 are very, very similar for editing and coaching. So we'll get to those in a minute. Step 1 is the only one where it's really quite different if you're taking this first step into editing versus if you're taking it in coaching. So let me start with the people who are interested in editing. My suggestion and the framework that I teach in BAE is the exact process that I went through. If you are wanting to dip your toe in the water to see if you would like to be a freelance editor, my suggestion is to start applying to editing agencies and book publishers, like I mentioned earlier. And to do that, you're going to need a couple of things. You're going to need first a 1-page resume. This really, really, please limit it to 1 page. I know it's hard for academics. We go through this in the course and people struggle to narrow things down. My suggestion is don't cut down your CV. Just start from scratch, right? Start from a blank document. Look at resume templates online. If you enroll in the course, I give you a resume template that has worked for me and worked for everybody in the course who's used it. And fill that in, right? Send them a 1-page resume and a very brief email. We're talking 2, maybe 3 sentences at the most, where you say, "Hi, I'm writing to apply for the freelance copy editor position," or however they describe it. "I specialize in APA, Chicago, MLA, whatever the citation styles are that you specialize in, because they're going to want to know that. And, thank you for your time." That's really the extent of the email. Please do not send a 1-page cover letter or anything like that. So the 1-page resume that highlights your editing experience and your writing experience, and the very short cover email that goes along with it that mentions the citation styles that you specialize in. That's all it takes if you're applying to an editing agency or a book publisher. After you do that, they will send you an editing test, and you will have to take the editing test. That is really the key component. You want to take your time, as much time as they give you. making sure that you complete it very carefully, very accurately. And again, inside BAE, I give you the resume template. I give you sample editing tests to look at. I give you feedback on the exercises that you do so you know exactly how many comments to leave, what kinds of edits to make, all of that stuff. But that is the key if you want to apply to an editing agency or an academic press. Now, I give this caveat because I want to be transparent here. Working for editing agencies or even academic presses is not ideal. I would not recommend that you plan to do this for very more than, 3 to 6 months, probably a year at the most. The reason for that is that the pay is quite bad, right? The editing agencies that people are getting hired at in my program pay around 1.5 cents per word US, and that equates to about $20 an hour for the members who are brand new to professional editing. The reason it's so low is, first, the pay is very low, but secondly, the writing is really terrible. These papers are really rough. Many of them are written by multilingual authors, and their English is very rough. And it's just the nature of the job. The reason why I tell you to start there anyway is because I treat it as on the job training, right? The alternative is you could go and pay the University of Chicago or San Diego or wherever $6,000 to get an editing certificate, and they're going to teach you basic grammar and copy editing, which you already know. And, you're going to walk away feeling like, well, that was nice, but I didn't really need to do that. Instead, what I advocate is that you get one of these jobs, that you get paid, not very much, but better than paying somebody else for a certificate. And you get that experience for a few months. And meanwhile, while you are taking on these editing jobs, and they're very flexible, if you say, oh, I can only do an article a week, they're okay with that. These companies, most of them, at least the ones that I suggest to people to apply to, they're nice people. They support you. They want you to have a good experience. Um, while you are taking these sort of practice jobs that you are getting paid to do, you're also building your website, you're building your LinkedIn profile, you're building your network and connecting with people, and you're even landing your first private clients. And many of our community members in BAE land these jobs. Almost everyone who has applied to an editing agency or press during their cohort has gotten the job. And many of them have even landed their first private clients during our 12-week cohort. There are even quite a few who have become fully booked within a month or two after finishing the cohort. So I know this process works. Again, the agencies are just a place to start. You get practice, and as you build up that base of private clients, and you get used to marketing yourself, you get used to talking about your business, then you can just quit the agencies or the presses and focus on bringing in private clients. For coaching, the first step, because obviously you're not going to be applying to an editing agency if you don't want to edit, the first step is to answer those two questions that I sent out in the homework and in the Map Your Academic Business workbook. Really, that workbook, if you don't have it yet, I can send it out in an email. That is the very first steps you need to take to decide what you want to do as a coach. And those questions are, who do you want to serve? And what problems can you help them solve? And the key to having a successful coaching business is to have a very clear vision of your niche, right? And it can't just be grad students. I'm helping grad students. It can't even just be I'm helping STEM grad students. It has to be very specific, because when you're talking your marketing on your website and your blog posts, social media, whatever you decide to do, you have to speak to the person's pain points and their struggles, right? When we work with someone, we're not just helping them save time. We are giving them back their life. We're giving them back their vacation with their family. We're giving them back their time with their children, or whatever it is that you're helping them with. But you have to be very clear on who that ideal client is, so that you can speak to exactly what they need and exactly how you can help them achieve this desired outcome, whether it's publishing or public speaking or whatever the case may be. So that is the first step, is to niche down, to get very clear on who those people are and how you're going to help them. And then you start taking the next steps of networking and building your business. Before we get to step two, let me give you an example. Lisa Anthony is a tenured professor of computer science. I recently interviewed her for my podcast. It's going to be out in a few weeks. She enrolled in December and joined our January cohort. She was very skeptical early on, like, I don't know about this. I'm not sure this is going to work for me. But during her cohort this spring, she was hired by two of these editing agencies and an academic press. Um, and she started bringing in her first private clients during her cohort. And I actually have a page on my website. It's acadiaediting.com/editors. And that's where I list, if you're a member of BAE, you can list your name and your website there. And she was getting her first clients from there. And her cohort wrapped at the end of March. And since then, she's continued to be active in our Slack community. She's continued working in her academic job. This is just a side hustle for her. And she just told me this week that she has developed a 3-month coaching program to help people write grants. And so there's this, I don't remember the name, but there's a grant that she applied to, that she won the first time around. Apparently, it's very competitive, and she's developed a program where people can sign up this spring, and she's going to help them write this grant and apply. And so that's an example of what is possible for you if you want to do the editing or the coaching route. You can come up with workshops. You can come up with, a 3 or 6 month long coaching program, whatever it is that you want to do. All of that is possible, and all of that is paid, right? We don't do free labor after we leave academia. All of this is paid. You deserve to be paid for your expertise and your time. And so I share that. I'm very excited for Lisa. She's been one of the most successful people in our program, and more importantly, is just having an amazing time, and is loving this new life that she's building. So step 2 is to network and attract clients. This is the same whether you want to be an editor or a coach. In our program, I give you many options for marketing yourself. Many of us are introverts. We don't like to dance on Instagram or make TikToks. And so I give you as many options as I possibly can for putting your business in front of those ideal clients that we just talked about. We start by looking over your website, or helping you create a website and figuring out how to write the copy on that website, the text on the website, in a way that is going to attract clients and make them want to hire you. This doesn't have to be complicated. It can just be a homepage, right? One important point that I will add here is that we as academics always feel like we have to lead with our credentials, right? We think that we have to prove ourselves, that we have to prove that we're worthy of people's respect or funding or whatever. When you are starting a business, you do not lead with you. You do not lead with your credentials. You can have a bio section that comes later, but what you need to lead with on your website, on your LinkedIn, on your social media posts, anything that you're putting out there as a marketing tool, you have to lead with your clients. And this comes back again to that point I just made, that you have to be very clear on who your clients are and the problems that you solve for them, because that's what you want to talk about in all of your marketing materials. When someone comes to your website, they honestly do not care that you have a PhD or whatever. They're going to think about that later. What you're going to hook them with at the top of your homepage is showing them that you understand their struggles and that you have the expertise and the experience to help them. They want to know that you get it, right? That you can help them. And so that is the key to any kind of marketing as you are building your business. We also go through sprucing up your LinkedIn profile. We talk about how you can send connection requests on LinkedIn. Um, I have you as a homework assignment during the program, make your first LinkedIn post because I know a lot of people are really nervous about putting themselves out there. And I've heard from our community members that if I gently force you to do it during the program, then it becomes much more, becomes much easier, much less scary. And it's so much easier for you to continue doing that later on after the cohort ends. We talk about blogging, we talk about cold emails, we talk about the ETD list that I mentioned earlier. And so there are really a lot of ways that you can put your business out there and in front of your ideal clients. And it's totally up to you. You don't have to feel salesy or awkward. You choose how you want to communicate with people. But I will say that you do have to be willing to try some different things to see what you like, to step outside your comfort zone a little bit and see what works. And I know this stuff works because it worked for me and it's worked for everybody who's already in the program. So, but you know, you're not alone when you do it inside our community. Then finally, step three is once you start building this network, once you start getting clear on your messaging and how to speak to your ideal clients, you are honing your expertise, right? If you're editing, your editing speed is going to get faster, which means that you're going to make more money because I recommend that people charge per word and not per hour. Um, and your coaching framework is going to become clearer. You're going to become better at communicating with your clients. You're going to rack up testimonials that you can use in your marketing. And so over time, you know, over the course of, say, your first year doing this work, you're going to be able to raise your rates. So let's look at the editing example here. With editing, as you take on more projects, as I said, you will get faster. Um, if you are making say 1.5 cents a word with those editing agencies, when you take on your first private clients, which could be during our 12-week cohort, you won't charge them 1.5 cents a word. You'll charge them at least 3 to 4 cents a word. So your earnings will automatically double just by the fact that you're taking on private clients instead of working for an agency or an academic press. So I said earlier that the folks who are starting out with these agencies are making around $20 an hour at that 1.5 cent per word rate. Um, so that means that when they start working for their private clients, they're automatically making $40 or $50 an hour with those first private clients. To give you a sense of what's possible here, I charge 7 or 8 cents a word to my clients, and I make my hourly rate ends up being at least $150 an hour. In the last 6 or 8 months or so, I don't think I've ever made less than $150 an hour on a project. Um, to answer the question, Rosalinda, the 8 cents is for me, I do copy editing. So thank you for asking for that clarification. Yes, the EFA is the Editorial Freelancers Association. They have a rate chart. I charge more than what's on the EFA rate chart. I think for copy editing, they say like 4 to 5 cents a word. To me, that's what I think, you know, if you have an academic background, and even if you're just getting started, you should be charging at least 4 cents a word for a copy edit. Developmental editing is a little bit more complicated. You have to have a sense of how long the project will take and all that. But yes, no, yeah, definitely charge. I think you should, especially once you have like a year of experience, you should be charging 8 cents a word. And more if you're doing scientific or legal editing, medical editing, right? I do humanities and social sciences, which is kind of on the lower end of the spectrum of what people pay. But for scientific or medical or legal editing, even business, I have a friend, Katie Ferris, who's a longtime editor of business research. And she told us, and I can share this because I know she's okay with it. I think she said on some projects she makes like what comes out to like 20 cents a word or something like that. So you don't see it reflected in the EFA, but there are many editors out there who are making a lot more money than that. Okay. Hopefully, I'm not going too fast. I just don't want to keep you longer than I said I would. Um, Okay, yeah. So we talked about per word rates. Your effective hourly rate of what you're earning will increase as you raise your rates, but also as you become faster and more familiar with Microsoft Word and navigating, the styles menu and making using track changes and all that stuff. Um, so that is what I've seen with members of my BAE community. As I said, is with the agencies, they are making around $20 an hour or so to start. And then when they take on the private clients, because they double their rates, they're making around $40 or $50 an hour just with their first clients. And really, you can only go up from there. Okay. With coaching, it's a little bit different. I am very firm in my advice that even with your first coaching clients, you need to be charging at least $100 an hour. Um, that might sound like a lot of money to you, but the reality of what the market offers for this is there are many people who make a lot more money than that. I know plenty of coaches who make $400 an hour. So that's where we start with coaching is $100 an hour, even if it's your very first client. Please do not work for free for editing, for coaching, for anything. Don't ever work for free. Um, when you when you are in academia, you are taught that, education is this virtuous endeavor, and therefore you should pour out your soul and every ounce of your energy and give everything you have to your students. That's ridiculous, right? Yes, education is virtuous, but you are a human being who deserves to be paid for your time and for your energy and for your knowledge and your skills. And so, like I said earlier, we don't do free labor anymore when we run a business. Whatever your whatever you decide to offer clients, and I help you through this through the program. We talk about pricing, we talk about different coaching packages. You start with a client having what we call a discovery call that's maybe a 15 or 20-minute free conversation just to get a sense of who they are and what they need and whether or not you're a good fit for them. And then you come up with a package, a pricing and a coaching package. Maybe they need a month of coaching every week or 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is. And then I help you come up with how you can pitch it to them in a way that doesn't feel gross. And you focus on, how can we help them achieve this outcome that they're looking for? But again, I just want to reiterate that we start at $100 an hour here. Okay. Let me get to those questions in just a minute. Let me very briefly tell you about what you get if you decide to enroll in BAE. I'll put the website in the chat. So becoming an academic editor, it started as an editing program, but it has expanded to include people who are interested in coaching and really starting academic businesses more broadly. The initial thing that you get when you first enroll is a self-paced online course with lifetime access. So these are videos, these are business templates, these are style guide cheat sheets, these are everything that you need to start your business. All inside the course. And so as soon as you enroll, you get lifetime access to these materials and to all updates that I make. I'm always adding workshops. We've had, I think, about 5 guest experts in the last year have come at various points and given workshops to us. And so you get to attend those live if you're part of the community, even if your cohort is over, or you get to watch the replay later in the course. You can see the replays from the workshops we've already held. So all of that is included as soon as you enroll in the program. Next, you get to join, if you join the core or accelerator plan, you get to belong to a 12-week group coaching cohort. And so what that means, the next one starts in the first week of September. We have just 9 spots left. And we meet once a week on Zoom. And we work through this material. It's discussion based. I'm there to answer your questions, to help you think through these different options. You get a lot of personalized feedback within the group setting. I record all the calls and I share the replay with your particular cohort. And in addition to that, we also have quarterly calls on Zoom with the entire BAE community. So even after your 12-week cohort is over, you can join those calls once a quarter and connect with other people and with me in person to ask questions, to socialize, to talk about your wins and woes. That's a thing that we do in the program. And so you're getting a lot of face-to-face time on Zoom with me and other members of the community to help answer these questions and support you through this whole process of, coming up with your messaging and building your business. Next, we have a community on Slack. This is huge. People come in, even again, this is lifetime access. You can ask and answer questions at any point. There's a lot of people in there who are, they're a year ahead of you and they've been through exactly what you would go through if you enroll in the program, and they're able to answer your questions as well. So you get direct feedback from me as well as feedback from the other members of the community. And we have over 65 people now who have enrolled just in the last year. So the investment for this for core, which is everything I just described, is $14.97. And we have the accelerator option. If you want more one-on-one support, if you want more direct access to me, then the accelerator option is the right plan for you. This comes with 2 one-on-one coaching calls with me on Zoom. And you get one-on-one access with me on a free app that's called Voxer. This is like a text and voice messaging app where throughout your 12-week cohort, you can send me a voice message on Voxer and say, Paulina, I just got my first client. What do I do? And then I can reply back that day during business hours and say, hey, congrats. Here's your next step. This is what you should write in the email. Here's what you need to send them, right? Here's what you should say on your discovery call. And so the accelerator plan gives us the space to have those one-on-one conversations outside of our Zoom calls during the week. And then I also include 2 full audits of your website and marketing strategy or any kind of text that you want to send me to get help with. As you can see, I've noted here that the price on both of these is going up $500 after August 1st. Why am I doing that? These prices, the $14.97, is where the program has been basically since I launched a year ago. And since then, I've added an entire new module on coaching. And I've added those 5 expert workshops. So that's an additional 5 hours of material with these experts talking about brand messaging and sales strategy and all of these kinds of things. And so the program is growing and my ability to support you is growing. I'm constantly in Slack, answering questions and giving you support. So the program is growing and we are adding material every day. I have a number of new things that I'm going to be adding, new templates and guides that I'm going to be adding this fall and going into next year. And so that's why, right? This is, I think, this investment can seem like a lot. But if you think of it as the fact that I am walking you through building this business, you're going to see that you can earn back this investment with the first couple of clients that you take on. And in fact, members of our community have said exactly that they've taken 2 clients and, earned back what they paid to enroll in the course. So I think the question you face right now is, do you DIY this and, potentially take months, if not years, to reach the level that I've talked about here, getting to be able to charge 8 or 10 cents a word on editing, and $200, $300, $400 an hour for coaching. You can do that, right? You can do that by yourself. It is possible. Many people do it, but there's a lot of questions and struggles that you're going to face along the way, just like I did, trying to figure it out for a few years by myself. Or you can do it with community support, which I think is a lot more fun. And I know people in our community have, really, really valued having a place to go when they feel like they're challenged or when they have questions that they need to get answered. So when you finish the course, you'll have a plan and tools for launching your business. You'll know the ins and outs of editing and coaching and how to attract clients. You will have practiced these skills. Like I said, we do, we create your website together, we create LinkedIn posts together. You practice doing this in the group, so that it's not so scary when you go off on your own. And you'll belong to a supportive community of people who are just like you. All right. Let me go to your questions now. I see here from Jennifer. Where did that go? Does the program include info on money, billing, tracking, taxes? Yes. So it includes an Excel spreadsheet that I use to help you track each project. So each row is a project. You enter, the rate that you charged. I tell you to track your time using a free website called Clockify, and you enter how much time you spent on each project. And the reason that I have you do that is not so much for like billing or anything like that, but it's you get to see over time what is your effective hourly rate ending up being. So, for example, I was working for some academic presses, which I really loved editing books. It was a really fun process. But I saw that over, 6 or 8 months consistently, I was never earning more than $40 an hour when I was working for them. And I looked back and I thought, I love working with this press, but I'm not going to grow my business if I'm only making $40 an hour. And so by having those data, I was able to say, look, I've got to quit this because I need to spend more time on attracting private clients. And so, yes, I show you how to track. I give you invoice templates. I have a letter of agreement or a contract that I give you that you can, tweak to your own, whatever you want it to look like, to share that with clients when they hire you. We get so detailed that we even go down to like what you should write in the email when the person first contacts you. I give you templates for that. Um, as far as uh, as far as taxes and like an LLC, I'll just quickly say for editing, you do not need to have an LLC. The caveat here is that I am not a lawyer or an accountant, and obviously it depends on where you live. So you should check with a lawyer and accountant who knows your local laws. But my understanding, at least for me here in Maine and most of the US, is that you do not need to have an LLC to be an editor or even a coach. The reason to have an LLC is that it protects your private personal assets legally if somebody were to sue you. So when I was just an editor, I did not have an LLC because I didn't think somebody was going to sue me, right, for editing their paper wrong, or something like that. Um, the other advantage is there's tax advantages of having an LLC, but that's not until you're making like multiple six figures. Um, with taxes, my advice is for you to get an accountant because, my accountant charges like $300 a year. And just the amount of time it saves you, like it would take me 24 hours of work to file my taxes. And $300 is just so much, is totally worth it to save me that time and stress. And they're going to best be able to help you file your taxes. But I can help answer questions in terms of how do you record your all of your projects and your earnings. You should set up a separate bank account, right? All of those details like on the front end, but then you'll have to talk to an accountant on the back end. Does that make sense? Um, if fall isn't a good time, could we enroll in 2026 at this cost? Yes. If you enroll before August 1st and you don't want to join the September cohort, you want to join the January cohort, just when you enroll, just send me an email with your name and I'll see your email address that you signed up with and let me know I want to join January instead. And that's fine with me. Let me scroll up here to these other questions. Tanina said, do you think this kind of job or side hustle has a strong future, especially with the rise of AI and automation? I have a podcast episode that just came out a couple weeks ago with Daniel Human, who is the creator of software called Perfect It and also Draftsmith, which is Draftsmith is their AI tool that adds on to Microsoft Word and helps editors work on documents. In that, we talk a lot about AI, and we both agree that AI is actually a terrible editor, right? The people who are out there, the scholars who are out there writing papers, having AI write it for them, running it through AI for editing. Not only is it terrible at editing even papers you wrote yourself, but those people, we're not going to hire a professional editor anyway, right? Those are grad students or faculty who don't have the budget to hire an editor, who don't value the relationship they can have with a private editor or a coach. Um, and so if they are running their papers through an AI tool to edit it, they're not going to get published, right? The writing is still going to be bad. And so I am not concerned about AI for editing because at least, what we see now and what I expect to see in the coming years is it's not good, right? It's not a good editor and it cannot replace, most importantly, it cannot replace the human aspect of you providing empathy to your client, providing substantive feedback on, where the argument is weak or where they need to make it stronger. If you've ever tried using AI for this sort of thing, it has, you can read a paper and summarize it or something, but it's not going to give the type of feedback that quality scholars need to be successful in their academic career. I also have an article on my blog where I try to use ChatGPT to edit my dissertation, and you could check that out if you're curious about it. It's kind of funny because it was so bad at it. Editing opportunities in other languages. English is not my native language. We have had there's a member of our community who edits in Spanish. So she speaks English, but her first language is Spanish, and so she works with clients who are writing in Spanish. Um, it is absolutely possible for you to edit in your language, the language that you're most comfortable using. Obviously, people are pushed to publish in English because of, the prestige of those journals. That's a conversation for another day of why that's a problem. But yes, you absolutely can edit in another language and the marketing principles would be the same, right? You would just set up your website um, and you would follow the same principles that I teach, but you would, write in your language to your clients, but still the marketing principles are the same. The realities of working with clients are the same. You would just need to translate the templates to the language that you use. Um, I'm curious to know if it's really necessary to stick with the editing materials related to your field or yeah, so as I said when I started out, my background is in US politics, but I edit all kinds of papers in the humanities and the social sciences. I did make the mistake of editing some chemistry papers and other like stuff that is way outside my wheelhouse. And I don't recommend that because it's just that in itself is a different language that I don't speak. And so, yeah, I think within reason, you can edit in different fields, especially if you're copy editing. But it's up to you to figure out how broad you want to go. Do you think the process you outline applying for freelance jobs at an agency works for developmental editing too? Most editing agencies do not hire developmental editors. Um, Whether or not you start with copy editing is up to you. If you know for sure that you don't want to be a copy editor, then don't start with the agencies. We can work together to help you land your first private clients. Maybe it's grad students. If you're a little bit nervous about working with clients and you want to get some quote unquote, practice first before you go put yourself out there with faculty. Um, you can we can start, targeting grad students. Maybe they need help learning how to write a paper for a journal to submit to a journal. And you can, kind of coach them through that as a developmental editor. Um, but no, I don't think you have to start with copy editing by any means. We have had quite a few people in the program who tried it and didn't like it. And so, they got the job with the editing agencies and they quit after a few papers. No big deal. Lesson learned, right? So it's really up to you how you navigate this path. And there are plenty of different options for you to choose from. I think I hit Rosalinda's. Jennifer, how do you set a standard for the incoming manuscript quality being ready to edit and a standard for outgoing quality? Um, so when I'm talking with a client, in those initial conversations, you always should ask for a draft, right? Even if it's a developmental edit, but especially if it's a copy edit, it doesn't matter if the draft's not finished. You ask them as you're developing a quote, please send me a draft. It's fine if it's not finished. I just need to see what it looks like. And you ask for the submission guidelines for the university or the journal or whatever. The reason for that is there's a lot of variation, right? The writing could be very good or it could be very bad. You want to know, like, if they've formatted their references in APA, but the journal they're submitting to requires Chicago. You want to know that because it takes very little work to polish up APA references and keep them in an APA, but it requires quite a lot of work to switch from APA to, say, Chicago, notes and bibliography or whatever. So you want to see the manuscript. As far as setting a standard for outgoing, like what you return to the client, when I'm copy editing, my goal is to get it as clean as possible so that the author has as little work as possible to do before they can submit. There's still quite a lot of work for them to do because, say, they haven't cited references, or they've have sections that are still missing, or they need to rework their tables, or whatever the case may be. But I do as much as I possibly can so that there's as little work as possible on their end before they go to submit. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but hopefully that helps. Um, I think I answered the LLC question. Um, a few examples of being an academic coach. Uh, it's so let me think. So a lot of them are, yeah, if as far as like things that are not related to writing or publishing, it really just depends on what you love to do. And that's where I start with every member of the program who wants to be a coach is I say, first, who do you want to work with? Who do you love talking to every day? For some people, that's undergrads. For some people, it's grad students. For some people, they would never want to talk to a student again if they didn't have to, right? And maybe it's junior faculty or senior faculty or whatever. There's some members of our program, Julia Galindo. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking. Julia Galindo she's a trained executive function coach. So she works with people who have ADHD and other executive function challenges. And that's the niche that she's carved out for herself, is working with grad students and early career faculty who have ADHD. She also has done some work with undergrads who need help applying to college for a bachelor's degree. Um, so it's hard for me to give too many examples because it really is up to you and what you want to do. So Philip, being in biology, it could be helping with research design or helping to figure out where to publish their articles, or and anything, navigating the process of applying to grad school or anything like that. And if you want to chat about it, just schedule a call and I'm happy to talk more one-on-one. If we join the program, but we have to teach or otherwise busy during the weekly Zoom meeting, yes, every Zoom cohort meeting is recorded and I send out the replay usually by that afternoon. Um, So, and those are saved for you. You have access. You can come back to those anytime you want, even beyond the cohort. Um, I think somebody else asked about, yeah, this call is being recorded today, and I will send the replay this afternoon. Translation. Yes, lots of people do translation. I know there's some concern about AI being used for translation. But I think it's and that is not my space. I don't do translation, but I suspect it is very similar to the situation with editing where people who really want quality work and are willing to pay for it are going to continue to want quality work and continue to be willing to pay for it. Um, but yes, setting up a translation business is, all of the marketing principles again would still apply for that. Advice for working with non-native English writers. Um, I don't think that you would really market that differently. I think it's just that if that's the niche that you want to focus on, those are the pain points and the problems that you would focus on in your marketing copy. And you would also want to express a lot of empathy because I think a lot of people who are multilingual, they feel a little embarrassed or ashamed that that they don't speak this language really well. That's the impression I've gotten from the clients I've worked with, and they're very grateful that an editor is helping them. Um, I also emphasize that I've seen a lot of papers that the peer reviewer has requested like a serious revise and resubmit, and they say that the language is terrible, and it's really not. I think there's really a lot of bias out there against people whose first language is not English, even when their English is quite good. So you can talk about that kind of stuff in your marketing. Um, the difference between line editing and copy editing. I don't like, so technically there is a difference, right? But I don't distinguish between them because when an academic comes to me, they just want it. They're just like, here, take my paper and make it better, right? Just fix this for me, right? Or just, I need you to clean this up so that I don't have to do it, right? And they're not, I don't know how many academics even know the difference between copy or line editing or even developmental editing. And so, what I teach people in my program is that you need to talk to the clients in the language that they understand, which is, I'm going to clean up your references so you don't have to do it, right? Or I'm going to polish your paper. And we could even say proofread it because that's what people always say is I need a proofreader. Well, what they really need is an editor. Um, but, I'm going to polish this up and handle the final details so that you can relax and spend the summer with your kids. And so I don't think it's important in this space to distinguish between all those different labels. And I think it can actually be harmful because you're going to confuse people. And that's the last thing you want is for somebody to come to your website and go, I don't understand what she's talking about. And then they click away. So when I tell people in my program to when you're setting up your website and you're talking about your services, you keep it very simple. You might say, I do copy editing, I do developmental editing, and I do coaching, right? You never want to have more than three categories. And you explain what that means for each one, but in a very basic level, because they don't care about whether it's a copy or line edit. They just want it to get accepted, if that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, you could charge different rates for them, but again, I think that's confusing. I think somebody that's coming to you for a copy edit just wants you to make it as close to publishable as possible. And so when I charge 8 cents a word, that's what I'm doing. I don't care if it's, grammar or typos or I'm editing for clarity and flow. I'm not rewriting stuff, but I am, polishing it as extensively as I can. Um, and if there is if there is a section that really needs to get reworked, I would leave a comment and say, listen, this is incomplete. You need to add some references here or whatever the case may be. Michelle's still grading. Sorry, Michelle. I don't miss that. Um, have I missed anybody? Are there people in the program who explore multiple options while in the program? Yes, absolutely. It is editing and coaching often go hand in hand, especially if like you want to do book coaching or dissertation coaching or something like that. So much about the first few weeks of the program is that exploration. And so we start in the first week talking about what does it mean to change your identity from professor to editor or professor to coach or whatever. And we talk about leaving academia and what that means if you are deciding to leave. Um, and we talk more in depth in the videos. I go in depth on the different types of editing and different types of coaching so that you can learn more about what exactly is involved in all of those. Um, and yeah, it's, like I said earlier, a lot of people will apply to an editing agency thinking that they can copy edit and they go, wait a minute, this is not for me, and they decide to go a different route. I even have one student, Wendy Gillis, her podcast episode just came out today. She joined and thought, well, maybe I'll try editing. And then she was like, no, I don't want to be an editor. And she does stand up comedy just for fun. And over the course of working together in the cohort, she realized she wanted to start um, a business where she helps people develop a personal brand. And because she's actually a marketing professor and she came to me for marketing help. And so she now has a business called, I think her website is wendygillis.com. Um, and she helps people and nonprofit organizations decide on what their niche is and what their personal brand will be. And she kind of, she's also working as a comedian and wants to like create a keynote speech. And so, yeah, it can truly be whatever you want it to be. Did I miss anybody? I think I got all of them. Any other questions about anything before I head out? I have to go pick up my son from soccer camp. Otherwise, I would stay much longer. Um, Questions, comments, concerns? You're so welcome. I'm glad to be here with you. Yeah, so just my final point about this. If you are thinking about it, please dive in. It is so much fun being in this program. We have such a great time. Um, if you have questions, email me. I'm happy to set up another call with you, or answer your questions over email or whatever. Um, don't let that fear get in the way, right? If you think this sounds exciting and something I would really enjoy doing, then let's explore it together. We can talk about it, because I can't say enough great things about having this kind of life and the success that people in the program have had. One of my students texted me the other day and said she's spending the weekend in the U.S. Virgin Islands and she's paying for it with the first $1,000 that she earned from editing. And I almost cried when I got that because it's so great to see people who were so unhappy for so long in academia who now have this newfound joy and excitement about life. And she talks about how she is getting energy out of her business that is then feeding her academic work. Like she doesn't hate life in academia as much anymore because she has this business to look forward to, and to work on every day. So thank you all for being here. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to head out, but I will share the replay this evening. You'll get some emails. Please let me know if you have questions or need further support. Okay. All right. Thank you all. Bye bye.